the Citizens Climate Lobby workshop on how to write your personal submission to the Climate Change Bill inquiry. I'm really thrilled that you're here joining us today. I'll do a little introduction and acknowledgement first though. So before we begin the workshop, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are all on today. Here on Sydney's Northern Beaches, I'm in the Mackellar electorate, which is also the home of the Guringai people of the Eora Nation. And I wish to acknowledge their continuing connection to country and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. About me, my name is Maree Nutt, and I'm a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby. And I've been helping to coordinate our submissions to this very important inquiry as part of our strategy team. I'd also like to introduce Rod Mitchell, who is the chair of Citizens Climate Lobby Australia, who's also going to be helping with this workshop. Thanks, Rod, for doing that. Pleasure. If there is anyone on the call today or who may be watching this webinar at a later date who doesn't know who Citizens Climate Lobby is, just let me briefly say that we are a non-profit, non-partisan, grassroots advocacy and education organisation. We're focused on advancing climate change solutions through democracy, and we're open to all, and you can find out more about us on our website, which is ccl.org.au. So just a little bit about what we're going to cover today. We're going to have an overview of the climate change bill and the inquiry. We'll help you to start to draft your personal submission. So if you could have a piece of paper and a pen handy, or open up a blank document on your computer screen, because we will do a couple of little activities today to help get you started on that. We'll also show you how to make your submission online and a couple of points about how to amplify your impact once you've done your submission. And if you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat box on your Zoom screen, and Rod and I will hopefully be able to answer them. If some of them are very relevant to the section that we're dealing with at the moment, Rod, please feel free to interrupt with those questions and we can deal with them on the spot. Otherwise, we'll try and address as many of them as we can at the end of the session. So let's get started. We're going to talk a little bit about the climate change bill, and I put the word act there in brackets just to help clarify, because I was a little bit confused when I first saw it referred to as the Climate Change Act, and then I've seen it subsequently referred to as a climate change bill, and I just wanted to make the differentiation between the words bill and act. So right now it's a climate change bill because it is proposed legislation. It's been presented to Parliament by Zali Steggall, and it's only if that bill is voted on and approved by the Parliament and comes into law that it will become an act. So after that process, it would then be called the Climate Change Act. So I think that's an important distinction to make right at the start, so that we can make sure that referring to it in our submission, we refer to it in the right way. But let's perhaps set the scene, and I know that there are many people on this call or listening afterwards who know well and truly the situation that we're facing, and but just to perhaps get us into the frame of mind to motivate us even more strongly with writing this submission. We know that the world and Australia's temperature is on the rise, and we know that globally the Earth's surface has warmed by over 1 degree Celsius since reliable records began in 1850. We also know that every decade since 1980, we've seen temperature rise. So each decade has been warmer than the last. And for Australia, our temperature rise has been 1.44 degrees Celsius since accurate records have started to be taken since, which was 1910. And that information comes from a really important and valuable source, the Bureau of Meteorology. And I just refer you to the website here, and I'll give you the chance to find these websites on our guide on our website as well. But that's a really good report that the Bureau of Meteorology put out just a few weeks ago called State of the Climate. So it's really good to lay out what's actually happening with our temperatures. We know that we need to keep global temperature rises as close as possible to 1.5 degrees to have any chance of avoiding a cataclysmic situation. And science has told us that in order to have the best chance to do that, we need to achieve net zero emissions no later than 2050. So the problem is also that our global emissions continue to rise, and Australia in particular has a problem with its emissions in that we are the 14th largest emitter in the world, and we have the highest per capita emissions of any country in the OECD. The other thing that, despite what is said to us from ministers and the Prime Minister, we are not on track to reach our very modest 2030 target of reducing our emissions by 26%. We will only do that if we use our Kyoto credits. And if you look at the government's own projections, which was produced in a report in 2019, at the end of 2019, on page 8, you'll actually see this table that I'm showing you now. Now, the table doesn't have those red circles around it in the report, but if you look at those figures, you'll see that that shows what our emissions reduction is, and that's not close to 26% reduction in terms of our projections to 2030. In fact, it's only 16.4%, which is 10% short. So that's the current projection that the government's own report is showing us. So that in itself is a significant problem. And of course, the other obvious problem is Australia's climate politics. To say that there's been a lack of bipartisanship on climate issues would be a huge understatement. In fact, some people and some commentators refer to it as we've been in a situation of climate war for way too long. What Zali Steggall said on our national conference, which was held on the 1st of November, was no matter what your reason for coming to the debate on climate is, there is room for everyone to want action. It's time to take the party politics out of this and move forward with a plan. And that plan is the climate change bill. So I wanted to hand over to Rod Mitchell, the chair of CCL now, to just take you through a little bit of the context of the climate change bill and what it sets out to achieve. Over to you, Rod.
Thanks, Maree. That's great. Yes, very importantly, the climate change bill, and if it becomes a climate change act, has a really good chance of ending the climate politics, the political problems that we've been having for so long, and has a chance to take climate change out of politics in the way that has happened in the United Kingdom. The UK introduced a very similar bill to this 12 years ago, and since then the UK has been able to set targets and adopt policies to achieve those targets without any controversy in the political sphere. And initially they set a target of 80% reduction by 2050, and then a year and a half ago under Theresa May they changed that to 0 by 2050. And as you may have noticed, the UK is making quite significant strides in addressing climate change. Not nearly enough in many ways, but well ahead of what's happening in Australia. And what's important is that they have a climate change committee which is giving them regular advice about how to proceed. So Zali's bill basically proposes to try and create a similar situation in Australia. But also it aims to put in place a target for net zero by 2050 by legislation. So that would enable us to catch up to most of the other countries in the world, the developed countries that is, who already have a target. It would also enable us to hold our head up high with China, who's set a target for similar target by 2060. So really, really important for us as a nation to join with the rest of the world, particularly now that a Biden presidency is coming into being, and there'll be a lot of pressure on Australia to join up. So we're fairly confident that that international pressure will enable the Australian government of whatever persuasion to fall into place fairly soon. What this act does is it accelerates, adds more pressure to that, and enables our government to step up more quickly. Particularly if we're able to get a lot of pressure on through this inquiry and through having lots of submissions coming through this process, and then if it then goes to Parliament, and the government has the option of declining to allow this bill to go to its third reading, which would involve a debate. So far, Zali has spoken to it, and a couple of other members have spoken to it in Parliament, and that's it. The government doesn't have to allow this to be debated, so it's really important that it does get debated, and that then also that there's hopefully there's a free vote, and that the Liberal Party prides itself on allowing free votes. And if that is the case, then there's a good chance that at least a couple of members of the Liberal Party would support this bill. So that's the political situation, and that's why these submissions are really important. And it would go a long way to setting net zero. The bill would also, if enacted, would allow for regular risk assessments. And every year, in fact, there'll be a risk assessment put forward by the Climate Change Commission, and that would include 5-year adaptation plans, which would enable governments and local governments and companies and communities around Australia to plan how they're going to deal with the increasing risk, and also how to adapt to that risk. Really, really important. Another thing that the Climate Commission would do is provide annual tech statements to advise government on which technologies are ready to be used and ready to be implemented, and which technologies need more research funding and support to enable them to come on more quickly. And that way, those emerging technologies could become part of the solution much more quickly and more readily. But far and away, I think the most important part of this bill is the Independent Advisory Commission. And that would be called, in Australia, it's in the legislation, it's going to be called the Climate Change Commission. And that matches the Climate Change Committee in Britain, which has so successfully been guiding the government towards zero emissions as by 2050. The key thing about it is that it provides a lot of transparency. What the Climate Change Commission advises to government will be public, will be transparent, and everyone can know it. Also, the Commission will be monitoring the government's progress and letting it know how it's going towards its targets. It'll also be advising the government on what solutions to be using to get there quicker, and very importantly, its independence will be primary. There's also even a process in place whereby the membership of the Commission will be guided by a bipartisan committee of Parliament to make sure that the Commission is sufficiently staffed by people who have the requisite knowledge of science and economics and so on to make the right advice. So it's a really, really important step forward, and will make a huge difference to helping us end the climate wars and put us on a track to what I like to call the the friendly race to zero. Back to you, Maree.
Thanks, Rod. That was great. And just to let you know, down the bottom of this slide, there is the Climate Act Now website, where you can get more detail about those 4 areas of the bill. So if you want to get a little bit more background, it also has things like Mythbusters and an overview of the bill. So that's a great resource for you. I haven't got it on this slide, but I have it in a later one, and I'll show you where you can find it on our website. But there also is a good report from the UK government on how their climate change committee is working. There's a 10-year review of that we can point you to, because I think that will be a good comparison to make in terms of the value of that mechanism when we're talking about the positives of the Independent Advisory Commission in this bill. So that's a great overview. Zali Steggall originally wanted to present this bill to the Parliament back in March, but because of the pandemic and the closure of Parliament, she wasn't able to do that. But the benefit of the delay is that she's actually been able to consult with a range of parliamentarians and experts and has improved on the bill. So this is really an important time now, because where the bill has gone to is it's gone to an inquiry which will be dealt with by the House Standard Committee on Environment and Energy. Now, this is the very first parliamentary inquiry into why Australia should commit to and legislate net zero emissions by 2050. So it is quite an important and historic moment for us to be a part of through our submissions. And the 68% there comes statistics of how many Australians support a national target for 2050 comes from the Australia Institute's recent report called The Climate of the Nation. There's a number of findings in that report that will also be helpful for your submission, but that is one of the key ones. So yes, this is why this is so important, because so many people support the type of legislation that Zali Steggall is proposing in her bill. The catch is that submissions will close on Friday, the 27th of November, which is this coming Friday. I've said 5 p.m. there. It's technically close of business, so that will take into account your own 5 p.m. But yeah, we have only a 2-week turnaround time for this inquiry, and we're hoping that this next week you'll be able to get your submission completed. Just quickly looking at who is on the committee, it's a range of Liberal and Labor and National and Independent MPs, including Zali Steggall herself. This committee is already established, that these people were on this committee already, and the bill has gone to this particular committee. So you may find that there are MPs that you know, it may be your MP who's on the committee, and so it gives you even more motivation to write your submission. I might just jump to the CCL website here. So on the homepage of the Citizens Climate Lobby website, you'll see we've made it very prominent, this inquiry and the opportunity to participate in these submissions. So if you click through there, you will get to a more detailed page of the website. And if you go to the personal submissions guide and you click through there, you will also find the background, everything you really need to know on one page here. And I referred to those websites that are on those slides. You can click through to all of those various websites. I usually love to go to the executive summary or the report at a glance page to get an overview of it, and then dig deeper as I need to. But there's some really important resources there for you to go through. There are other instructions, and we're going to go through those in a moment, but I just wanted to alert you to a draft of your letter at the very bottom. We haven't actually written your letter for you because I think it's important that you do your own individual submission, but we're giving you as much guidance as we can for that. So that's the pathway to get to all this information. So let's go back now to the steps to preparing your submission. So just to give you a few pointers, we want you to be firm, to be fair, and to be factual. We also want you to convey authenticity in your story, and that's why we're encouraging you to write your own story. We could give you a copy and paste template for your submission, but the inquiry will tend to put copy and pasted submissions into one pile and deal with that as one unit. We would prefer it if you could write your own submission with some guidance from us. We're suggesting, because it would be true to CCL's core values, that it would be helpful to not be critical of individual politicians or critical of political parties, but to be looking for the solutions and to be reinforcing the need for this, given the problem that we face and the solutions that are proposed in the bill. We would also encourage you to show appreciation to committee members. Thanking them for the opportunity to make the submission is a simple way to do that. Obviously, being abusive or derogatory in your submission is not going to help your case or have committee members want to read your submission with any sympathy, empathy, or be engaged with it. Different to some submissions, there is no word limit for this one, so you can be as brief or as detailed as you choose to be. And you can use varying formats. So it could be a letter, it could be a document that you submit. You cannot submit directly from email. You must upload your submission to the website. So it means that you can't just submit over an email to a specific email address. So there's a couple of tips for you. I've already shown you where these resources are on the personal submission guide of the website. And please feel free to use references to these different reports in your submission. Okay, so this is the point where I'd like you to sort of have your pen and paper or that Word document on your computer screen ready, because we're actually going to spend 2 minutes putting together our introduction and our personal information. We want to be factual, but we also want to give the people who are reading this a sense of who we are. So that might be where we live, what we do for work, or how we spend our time volunteering, or our family. And we want to share with them our concerns around climate change. Perhaps you have a very personal and direct experience of it. If you live on the land and you've experienced extreme weather conditions like droughts or floods or cyclones in your community, if you've been affected economically. So any concerns that you have or concerns for the future that you have, but also giving them a sense of where you see the opportunities lie for Australia if we were to become a global leader in the race to address climate change. So I'm going to leave that up on the screen, and Rod is going to give us 2 minutes now to just jot down a few points that we might like to include in that introduction.
2 minutes starting now.
All right. So I think we might just stop. Has anybody got any quick questions at this point? I see there's one question, Rod. Why are there no committee members in particular from the Northern Territory, but also the ACT? To be honest, Karen, I can't answer that question, but it may be that because it's a House of Representatives committee, there are fewer members of the House of Representatives in those 2 territories than there are in each of the states. So it probably has to do with the numbers. I think that, yeah, that would be the only answer I have. Rod, do you have an answer?
Yes, just to say that there are quite a lot of standing committees, and they're established at the beginning of every parliament, and they have to spread the membership around the parliament, and there are limited numbers in each, and of course they'll be thinking about how to match to ensure there's a balance around parties and to some extent states, but yeah, I guess the NT members and the ACT members would be spread on other standing committees, and I'm not sure which ones. But.
It's a shame. We should pull them up on the Northern Territory not being included. I can understand why the ACT isn't included, because we are really engulfed by New South Wales, even though we have quite a profoundly different environment in many regards. But the Northern Territory is in big trouble. I don't know if you've been reading up on it, because it's quite far afield for most of us. Is there anyone in the CCL who comes from the Northern Territory?
We have a couple of members from the Northern Territory, but it's important to be aware that there are only 2 members of Parliament for the whole Northern Territory, so they have to be spread around, and so they would be on other standing committees, and it's a question about whether they can't obviously be on lots of them.
Okay. So we should probably move on, but I just wanted to check that everybody felt okay with what they had written in their introduction, and hopefully you'll be able to expand on that going forward. So the next part of the exercise is to spend another 2 minutes jotting down some points on the following elements of the bill and trying to address the elements specifically. Now, you don't need to address every element of the bill. You may feel that the one that resonates with you might be the net zero by 2050 target, or the Independent Advisory Commission. So, perhaps write a few points now on the ones that you feel most drawn to, being aware that you could make some submission noting other areas of the bill. So, you may want to draw on some comparisons here between how both major parties have dealt with the COVID recession and the pandemic, and make some comparisons between the bipartisanship there and the need for bipartisanship here through this bill. You may want to draw on various technology knowledge that you have and how important it is for us to keep up to date with the latest technologies and their cost effectiveness for our own use, but also in that we may be able to export this technology to other countries. So having that technology readiness assessment is particularly important for you. So I would suggest that we spend the next 2 minutes trying to address some of the points here. And if you saw my screen before and what I was writing. I'll try and keep that to myself for the next 2 minutes.
It didn't show, Maree.
It didn't show. Okay, I was a bit panicked that it did. All right. So, Rod, do you have anything else to add to this section before people write?
No, I think that's a useful list, and you, in your readings of the other websites we've given you, you may come up with other things you might like to mention. But really, what's important is hearing your thinking and your for it to be for the commission to the committee to be hearing from lots of different people from different perspectives, and yours will be valuable, no doubt.
Yeah. Terrific. Okay, well, let's have another 2 minutes to write a little bit more.
Starting now.
All right, how did people go? Does anyone have a burning question? I think there's a question up here in the chat from Peter, and you've been answered, yes. So the ALP, we're fairly confident that they will support a third reading of the bill. But that decision will not be up to them. That will be a decision that is made by the majority in the House of Representatives. And it's a matter of whether it will be a procedural vote for the coalition to allow a debate, and whether or not, as Rod said before, whether once it did get to a vote, if there was a debate, whether they would allow a free vote of the coalition. So I think the important thing at the moment is for us to be focusing on this phase, and then we'll move into the next phase after the submissions and the report comes down. Okay, so let's just check with your submission that we summarise. We're going to personalise our submission, address the key elements of the bill, use some of those websites or your own resources to back up your statistics and your claims. And the other thing that we haven't talked about is in your submission, you may choose to nominate if you want to attend a public hearing to give evidence for the inquiry. It's likely that they will be looking to expert scientists and health professionals and other experts to give evidence to the inquiry, as well as the heads of organisations. So there may be some individuals called upon, and if you feel that you have the background in this to be a useful witness to this inquiry, then please nominate that in your submission. It can be in any format. You can submit a PDF, a Word doc, in various formats, but not email, as I said before. And the important thing that CCL would love is for you to send me a copy of your submission at the email address that you can see on the screen, maree@ccl.org.au, and we can keep a track of how many people we have helped to support put their submissions in. So actually getting your submission online is a relatively simple process. And let me just go to the website. Now, the link to this is in that personal submission guide that I've shown you from the website. And this is what the page looks like. Oops. Sorry about that. Where did I go?
It's all clear. It's still showing.
Oh, it's all right. So this is what the website looks like, and you can see on the right hand side here where it says upload submission. So if you click on that button, the first thing it will ask you is if you have a My Parliament login. So if you don't have an account, you'll need to create that account, which is a fairly simple process where you get the email to validate that you've created that account. If you already have an account, you can go straight to logging in, and it will ask you to submit your details once you've logged in. and you will then be given the options of what you'll be given the options of whether you want your name and your submission made public on their website, or your submission but not your name made public, or neither of those two, and your submission is kept off the website, but the committee will still see your website, will see your submission. So you have those privacy options when you actually log in. They won't ever share your contact details, but it would just be your name, or for CCL, it would be the name of the organisation when we make our organisational submission. So, and really, it's quite simple, the process that you go through from the website. So I'm sure that everybody will have no trouble doing that. But if you do, please don't hesitate to get back in touch with me at my email address for that. Does anyone have any questions about the submission process, or is that all good? Then we should move on. So the final thing to do is, once you've completed your submission, give yourself a pat on the back and thank you for your efforts. But it is possible for you to then amplify your impact. And what I mean by that is, it would be fantastic if you could send a copy of your submission to your federal MP or a senator from your state or territory. And on that personal submissions guide, we also have a link, if you don't know already, how to find the name of your MP and their address, or the contact details for a senator from your state or territory. So it'd be really important to do that. And also, if you can think of anyone or any business or organisation who you think may not have considered making a submission, if you contacted them very soon, then you could encourage them to make their own submission as well. And I think it will be really powerful to have as many submissions as possible by close of business on Friday, the 27th. So they are sort of two ways that you can amplify your impact in this process. So just to recap what we've talked through,
Maree, just letting you know your slide's not showing at the moment.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right, that's because I have to go back here.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so that's the overview. That's what we've covered today. So the overview, preparing your personal submission, how to make your submission online, and then amplifying your impact. So at this point, I just wanted to check if there were any more questions from anybody.
Yes, there's one from Yvonne. How do you decide which senator to send your submission to?
Good question. So you have a number of senators in your state. You can choose them by party. You can choose them by geography. They may be closer to you geographically. You may have a connection to a particular senator that you have communicated with before. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't make too much difference who you contact, or you may choose to contact all of them. That would be, the way I would look at it. But I would say the most important person to send it to is your federal MP. Is there another question there?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Well, listen, I think that is all we need to cover. But I really wanted to thank everybody for their time on this Sunday. There's a couple of email addresses there for you to get in touch if you have any questions. If you want me to have a quick read through your submission, I'm happy to do that. And I really do want to thank everybody for their time, and please go back to the CCL Australia website for all of the information. Any final words from you, Rod, to add to this?
No, just to say, to reinforce how important this is, and that Zali is really, really delighted with the amount of support she's been getting from CCL generally, and is really encouraging us to support her in this way. And it'll make a big difference to us if this gets up and we have a climate change commission. Our objective of pushing forward a carbon price and having having an end to the climate wars will just be make such a difference, and will be a great breakthrough for us. So anything that you can do in your submission to add to that that pressure will make a big difference, and to encourage our MPs to get on board and join the race to zero.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your support, Rod, and thanks everybody for being part of the call.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our CCL channel by hitting the button in the top left-hand corner of this screen. Spread the word of CCL by using the share icon to as many of your contacts as possible. Thank you. See you next video.